I'm joined today by Megan Paquin, CEO of Paquin PR, a seasoned expert who helps professionals and organizations craft powerful public narratives. She has collaborated with many in the legal space to enhance their visibility and impact. We'll be diving into the PR strategies that professionals, legal and beyond, can use to elevate their presence and build meaningful connections. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, so the PR world is separate from the legal world, but it's not obvious how these two industries or professions can complement each other. Can you tell us a bit about how you have experienced PR as a benefit to attorneys?
The two fields are actually really closely related when you look at it that way. Mm-hmm. A lot of lawyers have been trained to, keep litigation very isolated. But when you think about the impact of litigation or any kind of legal issue on a company or an individual, it can be very disruptive to their business, whether it's operationally, financially, even if it's a strategic move that you're trying to make. And that's where public relations can come in and complement the legal strategy to help ensure that business continuity, that you're communicating well with your stakeholders through any sort of disruption, and really maintaining the organization's hard-earned reputation. And again, that goes for individuals too, facing some kind of dispute or, again, working on something to advance their goals.
Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to attorneys and PR with their clients or for their clients, is it something that the attorney will call and discuss with you in general to say, hey, my client has this crisis and this is what we'd like to engage you for? How does that look?
Yeah, sometimes the request will come from an attorney who is working with a client and they see that there could be some potential issues communication-wise, whether that's internal to the client, whether like their employees or their closely held stakeholders, or external. Maybe there's some kind of public interest in that matter that they're maybe a little bit anxious about, or they think could be beneficial to their legal strategy, and so they'll want to consult with us to that end. But it also can work the opposite, where a client will come to us with a PR issue, and we might see the opportunity to bring in legal counsel to support that issue. And so we like to work both ways in that way.
That's a scenario I hadn't thought of. And what about advertising rules? Because especially here we're in Florida, and Florida advertising rules and engaging a PR firm, what are some of the things that you're mindful of?
So there's a couple different considerations that are really important for attorneys to be mindful of. When you're hiring PR counsel to work specifically on a matter, you want to make sure that that public relations counsel really understands the rules around attorney-client privilege and protection under the work product doctrine. Ideally, they can contract directly with you so that they become covered under that privilege, because we as communicators and public relations professionals can't fully support the client's needs unless we know everything. So that's a really important protection for the attorney, for the client, and for the PR firm. But when it comes to promoting yourself as an attorney in your practice and your firm, there's a lot of ways that public relations can be beneficial from the business development side. And that's where you need to be really mindful of the Florida Bar rules for attorney advertising and make sure that your PR firm understands that as well. You can't be called an expert in certain circumstances. You need to be careful about putting disclaimers on certain pieces of information. And even something as simple as showing a really strong win can require those triggers to happen. So you need someone who has an eye out for that for you, or else it's just going to become a lot of extra work and potentially headache.
And speaking of extra work, how has the industry changed with social media? Does it create, in general, I guess it probably works both ways in creating more work for you because you have more posts to create, but at the same time, it's helping. So it could either be more fires to put out or more things to promote, I guess.
Exactly. I was watching, going through my Instagram reels today and saw an attorney doing the Kendrick Lamar dance as part of an advertisement. And so
have you learned it?
Not quite there yet, but one day. And you just think back to, 10 years ago, that would have never been a thing.
True.
But it is a really great way, and I'm not saying it works for every attorney, but social media has really given us this opportunity to humanize ourselves in a completely different way. So whether it's a TikTok dance or just sharing your expertise or showing behind the scenes at your firm, that can be really beneficial. But like you said, there are lots of fires to put out, and it's definitely a channel that we want to be mindful of when we're working on matters, to make sure that we understand if something related to the matter comes into the public domain in that way, how can that affect the matter and how can it affect the client, and are we prepared to address that?
Something just crossed my mind about, what if a client comes to you and the thing that they've engaged your firm to promote isn't true? And let's say there's defamation involved there. What sorts of legal protections are you used to handling, or is your industry mindful of when it comes to that, if you're promoting something that isn't true but you learn later?
That is a great question, and it does happen. It can happen. One, on the public relations side, just as you on the legal side do, we try to be really careful about working with clients on the front end to suss out any of those potential issues. Your gut will tell you if something's not quite right, but if you go down the path, it's important to also ask your PR counsel, do they have defamation counsel? And in some matters, you could be dealing with either defamation against your client or the potential risk of creating defamation against somebody else. And so you want to make sure that that public relations professional understands the, rules of the road, so to speak, to stay out of that potential risk.
Very interesting. Anything else you'd like to add about this, incorporating attorneys with your work?
We have loved working with attorneys. That's part of our specialty as a firm. And what I think has been really great about how the legal industry and the public relations industry is coming together is it's really continuing to elevate the legal practice, especially on the business side. Attorneys are counselors to their clients, and when you can not only advise a client on how a matter is going to impact them in the courtroom, but also in their business, in their personal life, their professional reputation, now you've really created some additional value that's going to keep a lifelong client, and we love being a part of that process.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
So much to think about. Thank you for joining us and sharing these eye-opening things that I've never thought about.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. I hope today's conversation has given you some fresh ideas on how to amplify your own impact. Stay with us here on Legal Connections.